Our final presenter for this evening is Ms. SylviaFrench. Sylvia, where are you?
Right here.
There you are, dear. Okay, fine. Why don't you come up and talk about your experiences, not only in Littleton, but also relating it to what could possibly happen here in Alton.
Thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me? Is that coming through? Okay. That's a tough act to follow here. I'm much quieter, I'm afraid. We own a family home in north of the Notch in Littleton. You may have read news accounts of citizen concern in Littleton about police calls to Parker Village, which is a 50-unit property with low-income apartments. It's subsidized by the federal government's HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Division. I recently spoke with Brian Ward, who's the attorney and the former state representative who brought this issue to public attention. And he had one piercing piece of advice for other towns grappling with affordable housing percentages. Quote, look long and hard at affordable housing available in surrounding towns. I went online and looked at the towns near Littleton, such as Sugar Hill and Franconia, and found zero affordable housing. It looked like there was one facility in Bethlehem. Instead, when you go and look at those towns, you're steered to Littleton for affordable housing. And by contrast, the town of Littleton has Parker Village, Colonial Court, which is a low-income senior housing, Lane House, which is low-income senior housing, Beatty House, which is a HUD-subsidized income-based apartments unit, and Country Lane Apartments under a head. Plus, it has a HUD, which is the Affordable Housing Education and Development, Inc. This is a HUD-approved housing counseling agency. It advertises that they offer assistance with fair housing, pre-purchase education workshops, financial management, budget counseling, home improvement, and more. Clearly, Littleton is carrying an unfair burden in the quote-unquote fair share department. One sobering fact is that a high percentage of the public elementary school students are now living in poverty. I spoke with the Littleton police chief trying to get his assessment of things, and he was very politic and said that because Parker Village is heavily populated, there are more calls there than there would be to a more sparsely populated area. And he also said that since there's been so much focus on this issue, the calls have been going down, and that the management company has been working more closely with the town to mitigate the problems. And he had one possible explanation for the heavy burden that Littleton carries, which is that it is the commercial center for the area, which means that we have the box stores, we have Lowe's and Home Depot and the other box stores. We have an industrial park in Littleton, and we have more working opportunities. And also we have social services such as the Social Security offices there. There's a branch of the community college there as well. But basically, from this taxpayer's vantage point, the cost of all this affordable housing appears high in terms of the services provided. Because Littleton is a commercial center, seems insufficient reason for it to have such high percentages of public housing. The notion of fair share should apply to the tax burden placed on the citizens of all the towns by federal and state mandates. Mr. Ward's advice to make sure that other area towns are shouldering affordable housing costs and that your town is not stuck carrying more of the load than it should is very sound. As he noted, due diligence is all, and they regret that there probably wasn't as much due diligence in Littleton at the start of all of this as there should have been. In closing, I'd like to read to you a few quotes from the 2010 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice in New Hampshire. as was mentioned earlier, this was written by the Fair Housing Project of New Hampshire Legal Assistance under contract with the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority. You can find this report online, and I'll leave you to draw your own conclusions about what all this applies for local control and private property rights. 1. Demographic data establishes that in New Hampshire, racial and ethnic minorities are clustered in the state's two largest cities, Manchester and Nashua. This report attributes land use controls as a significant contributory factor, which also affects opportunities for many families with children. Then they get into lending practices. They say the lending practices that evidence disparities based on race and national origin raise concerns about the presence of discriminatory practices, both intentional and otherwise. How they determine that, I'm not really sure. Statutory prohibitions against source of income discrimination would remove further obstacles to housing opportunities and eliminate the use of source of income as a proxy for racial and other types of illegal discrimination. Thus far, there has not been sufficient legislative support for this issue. In other words, if you are a landlord and you're looking to see source of income so you know if this tenant that you're about to take in will be able to pay the rent, they would like to do away with that so that you won't be able to determine that. But thus far, there's not been support, legislative support, and we hope that continues. And then lastly, they're saying that lack of knowledge about housing discrimination laws and information on fair housing resources limits housing opportunities. Increased collaborative efforts to reach renters and home buyers should be a focus of the coming years. And then in July, it was announced that HUD awarded over $800,000 to New Hampshire legal assistance to combat housing discrimination. And according to the press release about this grant, they will conduct systemic testing and provide phone-assisted counsel and advice or full legal representation as applicable to those in need of fair housing assistance. They will expand their work to identify and develop cases and strategies that help address systemic issues identified in the 2010 analysis of impediments to fair housing choice in New Hampshire. So I put this out there for you. This is something you really should go look at, this impediments to housing choice, because it's a real eye-opener. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you very much. And thank you for all of the presenters this evening.
Croc TV.